the International Business Council is. And so I brought a little bit of information here. If you're a senior, start looking for a job, or know somebody who's looking for a job, it would be a great place to start. We have invited about 25 to 30 major employers of Chattanooga. I'm not going to give you the whole list, but there's a link down here. Just go and check it out, see if you want to do it. And again, I guess I'll keep all that information somewhere towards the front, and on the way out, we can grab one and take from there. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Anton. Appreciate it. So I have the pleasure of introducing you this evening to Sarah McDougall. She is an entrepreneur, an author, an amazing brand strategist, and marketing guru. She has over 20 years of experience in the media and marketing business, and her most recent book is Live One Face, Shed Your Values. Yeah. So can you imagine what this might be about? Live one face, shed the mask, own your values, and lead wisely. What do you think that might be about?
Being integritous in business.
Say that again?
Being integritous in business.
Anyone else? Want to add to that? Yeah, so it's about having integrity in who you are and what you say and do, no matter what aspect of your life it is in. It's about leadership with integrity. And you'll look forward to her presentation tonight and hearing her story. So please give her a warm welcome. Thank you, Sarah, for being here.
Well, that's awkward. There's this really bright light right in my eyes, and I feel like I need to move somewhere else, or I can't see any of you guys, and I don't like speaking with a handicap. I like to be able to see you and speak with you and feed off of what I see you thinking. So I'm going to figure out how to set this up a little better, and you can watch this video that lets me skip having to talk about myself a little. And there's no sound. So hold on a second. Is there a way to plug in the sound? Yeah? Oh, it's just not all the way in. Okay. We'll do that again. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Now it's really
and I direct Hollywood quality
Here we
brand campaigns for companies that value their social impact just as much as their bottom line. I started in media more than 22 years ago as a teen TV show host. Since then, I've produced or directed more than 150 story videos for everything from citywide marketing campaigns to global satellite TV networks. In 2014, I even had a music video nominated for Video of the Year at the Canadian GMAs. The problem is that many businesses are so focused on delivering a great product or service that they fail to communicate their values in ways that engage customers on a deeply emotional level. People today want quality products and quality service, but they also want to feel good about buying from a business that shares their values and is making a difference. I solve this by creating story-driven brand campaigns that build long-term brand loyalty by showcasing ways that your company has your consumer best interests at heart. I'm passionate about helping businesses clearly brand their core values because when I was 12,
Hold on. No worries.
Hi, I'm Sarah Asante, and I direct
Watching it all
Hollywood
over
quality
again, I'm
brand
sorry.
campaigns for companies that value their social impact just as much as their bottom line. I started in media more than 22 years ago as a teen TV show host. Since then, I've produced or directed more than 150 story videos for everything from citywide marketing campaigns to global satellite TV networks. In 2014, I even had a music video nominated for Video of the Year at the Canadian GMAs. The problem is that many businesses are so focused on delivering a great product or service that they fail to communicate their values in ways that engage customers on a deeply emotional level. People today want quality products and quality service, but they also want to feel good about buying from a business that shares their values and is making a difference. I solve this by creating story-driven brand campaigns that build long-term brand loyalty by showcasing ways that your company has your consumer best interests at heart. I'm passionate about helping businesses clearly brand their core values because when I was 12 years old, I spent a month without my family volunteering with a team of doctors and dentists living on a catamaran and going from island to island in very primitive areas of the South Pacific. As I worked alongside them, providing medical care and health education, I felt firsthand the power of a personal story to transcend barriers and create a powerful emotional response. My clients say that I help discover and articulate that elusive thing you can't quite put into words. Then I draw out the best stories to showcase your product and your values, and I map out your best strategies to bring your brand alive and to get viewers reaching for their wallets before they even move like a dope.
All right, so I get to skip the self-introduction, right? That's all done. Thank you very much for the honor of being here. Thank you, the almost Dr. Sheehan, for inviting me. And Stephanie and I have been friends and acquaintances for a number of years now. And she asked me several months ago if I would come and speak to you when my book was out. So this has been planned for a while, and it's an incredible honor to be back in classrooms where I used to study and to join with you guys this evening. Question. What is the hardest decision you've had to make this year? Where to intern? Okay. Anybody else? I've been in class with some of you, and you are very capable of talking. What is the hardest decision that you've had to make this year? Okay.
Leaving one job opportunity for another one.
Okay. Before I came, I put that question out on my social media feeds. And I got some really vulnerable responses. The decision to be willing to give up on some friends. Well, maybe that's not the most accurate way to say it. The decision to accept some friend's rejection of me rather than hoping and trying to change it. That was one person. Another. Whether to move my practice to a larger building, more rent, more expenses, but more room, better parking, and more centrally located. I did, and it was absolutely the right call, but it was a very scary decision. Whether to move to the opposite coast to one of the top hospitals in the nation for my husband's cancer treatment where we would be alone, or stay near home and go to a lesser rated hospital where we would have a huge support system. I'll have to answer whether it was the right call after we've survived this. The hardest decision we made this year was which child to adopt. The hardest decision I've made this year was not to file suit against someone who did wrong against me. I had the case completely on my side, yet I felt compelled by God to turn the other cheek. So I'm going to ask you again, what is the hardest decision you've had to make this year?
Letting go of what you thought your dream was and realigning what your dream needs to be now.
That's tough. And it's not going to be the first time or the only year that you face that. Anybody else? Okay. All of you who didn't answer, there's that one decision that you decided not to raise your hand and say, and you know which one it is. Are you sure that you made the right call? Yes? No? Now I'm letting you, all the rest of you, off the hook. You don't have to tell me what the decision was, but the decision that you know in your mind, are you sure that you made the right call? No? Some of you saying yes? Do you know why you know it was or wasn't the right call? Yes? No? You're thinking about it. Jeff Robinson, on this blog, The Gospel Coalition, wrote, "Our level of spiritual maturity is most accurately measured in the mundane. Godliness, or a lack thereof, develops in the press of everyday life. I can enter the pulpit and wear a mask of piety for 45 minutes, but my true colors are revealed in getting 4 young children ready for church. They're unmasked during my first 5 minutes through the door at the end of the workday. The longer you live, the more of those little choices in the press of the day that you have the opportunity to make. And the more you realize that the big choices are not the big ones. The big choices are the little tiny ones. There are no neutral choices." I'm going to say that again. There are no neutral choices. There are good choices and bad choices. There are moral choices and immoral choices, and some of them are even amoral. They have nothing to do with morality at all. There are choices of taste and choices of preference and choices of good and choices of evil, but there are no neutral choices, because every choice that you make turns you into someone. Every choice is a fork in the road that creates a path, a direction in some direction. There are no neutral choices. Now, there are a lot of fantasies we have that somehow the path to success, the trajectory between sitting as a student in a chair and whatever you imagine your success to be, is that if somehow you make the right choices, you follow the right formula, listen to the right people, that it will be a direct line from me to success. And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you tonight that the path to success looks a lot more like a bowl of spaghetti. A lot of twists and turns and curves and tunnels and ups and downs and all piled in on each other, and sometimes you have no way of knowing if you are ever going to get to whatever that thing is that you used to call success. But in the little choices and the big choices, as you are navigating that plate of spaghetti, it's important to remember that none of the choices are neutral. When Stephanie and I were talking about what to share tonight, I have a lot of things that I could talk about. There's different aspects of content from my book that I could pull out. I got a chance to speak with some of today's most wildly successful CEOs and leaders in business and athletic celebrities, a former CFL linebacker from the Toronto Argonauts, the CEO of Chipotle, CEO of a women's fashion house, an incredible designer label in New York City. All of these incredible people that I got to sit down and spend time with as I was interviewing them for my book. And I asked Stephanie before I got here, what do your students need to hear? Because we're all at different points in our life, right? So what does she think that you guys need to hear? What should I pull out of all of this information? And so she asked me to share a little bit, she didn't put it this way, about my bowl of spaghetti and how I have journeyed in a very not direct line from 14, 15 years ago, being exactly where you are sitting now, to where I am today. And that's what I want to talk to you some about tonight. The short version is this. I came to Southern as an English major with a religious studies minor, and this is not a quiz. You don't have to write down my bio. I mean, you can if you want to, or you can read it in the back of the book. Hey, I'm not going to ask you questions later on which major I went. I came to Southern, 3 years invested at another university into an English major. And even though I was probably a better fit for business or marketing or communications, I decided, this was a big decision, I decided at that fork in the road to stick with the English major that I had invested 3 years into and finish it in 2 instead of starting from scratch and doing a whole new degree. That decision was primarily driven by the fact that I was working 3 jobs to stay in college. I had no scholarship, only scholarship money that I earned by my grades, no sponsorship money, and 0 money from home because my parents could not afford to send me to college. So the quickest route to the diploma seemed like the smartest one. And that meant sticking with the degree I'd already started and moving forward as fast as possible. So I ended up working, like I said, 2 or 3 jobs every semester, taking 16, 17 credits, wore myself out. But it was good. They were good years. Then I did the proper Southern matrimonial college thing, got married in the Garden of Prayer 2 days after graduation, and to a theology major, no less. And 2 weeks later, we moved to Andrews, where he could take seminary, and I started working part-time, or full-time at the time, as the marketing director for the classical radio station on campus, which I hated. I like classical music. I just didn't like having to be up at 4 o'clock every morning and never seeing the sun, because I worked down in a basement, and I was the early morning radio announcer, and by the time I got off work in Michigan in the winter, it was already getting dark. And that was a really lousy, sunless, vitamin D deprived way to live. And after a year of that, I said, anything has got to be better than this, and I went back to school. And so I got my master's degree in international development and nonprofit business administration. And I sat there asking myself, why is an English major, religious studies minor, who never had the first shred of intention of ever teaching English or even being a writer, now taking an international development degree with an emphasis in nonprofit administration? And I wasn't a business major in undergrad, so how, God, are you going to fit all of this together? Well, my last semester of grad school, I ended up taking a trip, well, my last year of grad school, I ended up taking a trip to study abroad in Florence, Italy. I know, rough, right? I found out that I could take the same classes from the same teachers overseas in Florence, pay for my ticket, pay for my room and board, pay for the tuition, and have $1,000 spending money left over for the cost of just the tuition back home at Andrews. And I said, why would I not go spend a summer in Florence? So on the way to Italy, I stopped in London, because back then you could get tickets for $472 or something from like Chicago to London. They don't have those anymore, I don't think. And then you could get like a $50 ticket to hop from London to pretty much anywhere else in Europe, and that was the way to go. So I had some friends who were from London that I'd gone here to school with at Southern, and I spent a few days touring the UK and hanging out with old classmates. And while I was there, one of my friend's dad asked me if I'd help him proofread his doctoral thesis. And I said, sure, because I'm nice like that, and I'm staying in your house for free and eating your food, and so yes, I'd be happy to help you proof your doctoral thesis. And a year later, he offered me a job, because I was nice enough to prove his doctoral thesis for him. And out of that, I got picked up my final semester of grad school in a role that ended up allowing me to become the associate director of an international nonprofit based out of London for the next 6 years. Moral of that story, be willing to do people favors and ask nothing in return. Invest in your network all the time. Be just as nice to the people above you as you are to the people below you, or maybe I should put that vice versa. Be just as nice to the people below you as you are to the people above you. And while there may come times that you need to cut ties, because there are a handful of narcissistic sociopaths that you're going to run into in the world, and they may not be the most compatible people for you to work with in the long term, you can do that without burning bridges, most of the time. But try. So I learned young to invest in my network. Is anyone here a nurse? Okay. Anyone here a teacher? Planning to be a teacher? All right. So for all but maybe 2 of you, you aren't going to have the kind of job that allows you to walk in with your credentials or your little medical license. Not that for those who are in the medical field that's little, that's a big achievement, I get that. But where you can just walk in and say, hi, I'm qualified to work here, can I have a job? See, in business, you don't get to do that. It doesn't work like that. Your network, your relationships with people, that is your credibility. That is the equivalent of a teaching license or nursing credentials or a diploma that says MD. And how you treat people in the business world is everything as you navigate where you are right now in the students' pews, not pews, seats, to whatever eventually becomes your interpretation of success. After 6 or 7 years working in that international nonprofit, I faced another huge decision when I found out I was pregnant with our first child. I had landed my dream job right out of grad school. I traveled 3 or 4 months out of the year. I was working all over the world. I was in charge of a film development crew. We did media productions. We did short films. We were writing and developing resources. I got to pick up all the second-hand, double-booked speaking engagements that the director of the organization wasn't able to take. I couldn't have asked for a better, more exciting environment in which to grow and expand and try a bunch of new different things. And then I found out I was having a baby. And now, dudes, this doesn't have nearly as much impact on you as it does to all the women in this room, because regardless of how equal we are or like to think that we are in today's world, you don't have babies. So for a woman who's on an upward trajectory, and for me, that included a lot of international travel, a newborn in arms was completely incompatible with being away from home and on the road 3 or 4 months out of the year. And I had to decide, where are my values? What am I going to do in this situation? Are my values about advancing myself and the stuff that I love and the things that I am passionate about doing, or do they lie with my family and being the kind of mother I know God wants me to be? And there were days when I felt like I was the ant in one of those little National Geographic video clips where it starts out at a galaxy and then it zooms into planet Earth and you see the blue globe hanging in the sky, and then it zooms in and you see continents and oceans, and then it gets closer and you see countries, and it gets closer and you see cities, and it gets closer and you see Central Park, and it gets closer and you see grass, and then it gets all the way down and there's an ant on a blade of grass. And I felt like that was exactly what had just happened to my world. Y'all don't have to look so horrified, girls. It really wasn't that bad. But it was painful in the middle of that experience. And I had to decide not just which direction I was going to take, but I also had to decide what was my attitude going to be about it. And I will tell you, girls, God and I had it out sometimes. Nicole's nodding. She and I have walked some similar paths at times. 8 months later, I found out we were expecting baby number 2. Yay! Double the diapers and the dishes. And by the time my daughter was born, I was at peace. God is amazing how he can work in our hearts, and he can bring us around to contentment in things that we once thought were taking away what we wanted, and he works on us and brings us around to tell us that this is actually what he wanted for us. And oddly enough, somewhere around the time that I was completely at peace with that, I started getting job offers. And this time, they were for jobs I could do at home. So now I had another decision. I said, okay, if you want me to work for you, you're going to have to wait 4 months. My daughter has not arrived yet, and I am not doing anything until she's at least 3 months old. So that big fancy project you want me to do for you, the other stuff that you want lined up, that you want done like last week, rush it, get it done immediately, I'm not even going to start for 4 months. And if you want me to be the one to do it for you, that's how it's going to have to be. And they waited. And when she was 3 months old, I told the people that I was now going to be working with and contracting for that I would work 3 afternoons a week, specific hours, no travel, and no on-call contract entrepreneurial hours that used to eat up right into my midnights and early mornings and late everything around the clock. And that was some big boundary setting for me because that was tough. That was another big choice that I had to make. But again, I knew that it was okay because I aligned with my core values. When she was a year old, I realized I was financially jeopardizing myself and my family by not having a company, by being a solopreneur. And so I faced another really scary decision, and that was to become an entrepreneur and a business owner. I didn't know any other women my age who had launched a company. And the idea that I might do it wrong or screw it up or somehow miss something on business taxes was almost paralyzing. I am not an accounting major. I can look at the QuickBooks icon on my computer and somehow screw it up. It's terrible. My CPA is so patient, and I have to pay her very well for that. And so I had to make that decision. And I leapt off the cliff and tried to figure out how to build that parachute before I hit the ground. And the next year, it was a second company. And my goal each year was end the year in the black. Pay everybody, don't owe Uncle Sam anything, hopefully pay myself something, and be in the black at the end of the year and do really good work. And we did the first year. My team and I, we did. We did some incredible marketing campaigns for national medical franchises, and it was amazing stuff. And year 2, I said, well, that worked really well. I'm going to have the same goal again for year 2. And so my goal was to repeat year 1, do great work, and end the year in the black. And we did. And year 3, I started thinking about, okay, well, maybe we should expand, and maybe we should niche. Some of you have come and talked to me after classes already, and you've asked me, how do you figure out the choices that you're going to make? Because here, how do you get to be from an English major to an entrepreneur who's a published author who does business and branding? Those things don't seem to fit together, but they can. So in year 3, I began niching into a completely different but related aspect of our services. And I have another video for you. So this is the result of niching down.
I'm Sarah, and I'm a brand strategist. I advise highly successful female CEOs over the age of 50 on how to remain relevant, visible, and essential throughout retirement. For over 20 years, I've crafted compelling brand stories for a wide range of organizations. I've produced and directed more than 150 video stories for everything from citywide campaigns to national franchises, even to global satellite TV networks. And last year, one of my music videos was nominated for Video of the Year at the Canadian GMAs. The problem for uber powerful female leaders as they move closer to retirement is the very real and frightening prospect that their years of dedicated service, experience, and contributions are going to become irrelevant. They may not even have retired yet, but they already feel forgotten, and they're worried about what to do next since they've accomplished every goal in sight. I solve this by handcrafting a personal legacy brand to position each woman as a key leader in her field, someone that younger leaders clamor to learn from and aspire to become. I do this by combining my detailed knowledge of social, digital, and media world with their expertise in the traditional world. And together, we curate a virtual library of individual achievements, strategies for success, and anecdotes on navigating their very challenging situations. This platform of influence enables my clients to keep on meaningfully contributing in their fields of expertise, remain sought after as speakers, and poised to mentor the next generation of highly successful female leaders. I love doing this because I come from a long line of remarkable, resilient women. My mom has 9 older sisters, all born on an Arkansas sharecropper farm, and every single one is incredibly strong and brave and smart, but none of them had the opportunities they deserved for academic or financial success. As they grow older, I see them feeling more and more sidelined, and at the same time, I watch young female leaders starving for mentorship and inspiration from real-life role models. Nothing makes me happier than hearing one of my exceptional female clients saying that even though she no longer has to work for a paycheck every day, she still has a meaningful reason to get out of bed each morning. Because today is another day that her platform of influence has empowered her to give back to the next generation in ways that money can never buy.
Same skill set, same team, same production, same branding, niche market. And that niching was the result of taking in information along the way and always being willing to adjust and change and bend with feedback. Yes?
When you talk about niching, are you talking about like finding, it's the act of finding a niche and just like being willing to try different?
Being willing to try different things, listening to feedback that you get, and I'm going to, you bring up a good point. We talked about in the class, I think that you were in, about brands attracting and repelling, or was that the early morning class? I can't remember. One of the things that I talked about in the early morning class, and I'm going to digress just a little bit because this is really important. Every good brand attracts, but great brands repel. Now, if you want to write down something, don't write down that I was an English major. Write that down. Every good brand attracts. Great brands repel. Somebody tell me why you think that's true. Surely we have a brave one. Why is that true? You're making eye contact. Sorry, you're unlucky. No, not you. Her. Yes, you.
Well, if you're a great brand,
Can you speak up?
if you're a great brand, you're gonna try to stick to your morals. And if anybody else that does not align with your morals, they're not gonna be working with you.
That is very good. So, did you hear what she said? Could you hear? If you're a great brand, you're going to be sticking with your morals. People who don't align with your morals are not going to work with you. That's the essence of what I'm trying to say. So let me flesh that out a little bit. Even just in marketing, a great brand will drive away the people who are not your best client before they even walk in your door. Because it will be controversial enough and confident enough in your identity and your values, whether it is your values as a company, your values for a product, or you yourself and the brand that you are as a business professional, that it will repel those that are not compatible with the product, the service, the company, or your values. And that's great. You know why? Do you know why a great brand should be driving people away? Because it's driving away all the people that were going to waste your time. All the people that weren't going to love your product in the first place. All the people whose conscience wasn't in alignment with the values and the ethics and the integrity that you have. You want your brand, personally, professionally, corporately, to attract those who are in alignment with the values that you share. By default, that means it is repelling those who do not share those values or that purpose. And that is a good thing, because it leaves room at the table for you to work directly with the people or the products or the services that are most in alignment with what you want to achieve. So, does that kind of come back around? Thank you for bringing that up. Now, I want to give you 5 things. These 5 things, these are also good to write down. If you are a note-taking type, write these down. When you're navigating your plate of spaghetti, also called the road to success, there are 5 things that I have learned that make all the difference. Number 1, make the best of every opportunity, even when it seems completely unrelated to your long-term goals, because you can learn something from every opportunity, even if you learn how not to do it next time. For example, I was an English major. Do we have any English majors in here? Besides my dear girlfriend, Kyla, who is here from Atlanta and is so super awesome and another published author. She has so many books out, it puts me to shame. No other English majors? All right. No, underrepresented, I see. So, I was an English major. How does being an English major help you brand campaigns? Choices of words, absolutely. It is always helpful to be a walking thesaurus when you're trying to write copy. Communication. Anybody else?
The power of the language.
The power of language. I like how you put it. I will tell you, one of the most significant things that I carried from having an undergraduate degree in English into business branding, film development, and that is understanding the arc of a story. Because when I sit down behind the camera as a director on set and I'm capturing someone telling their stories, one of the gifts God has given me is the ability to take people who have never been in front of a camera before and who are absolutely petrified by having to stare into that glass lens and tell it, the audience, through that glass lens, something about themselves. That's scary. And if you don't think it's scary, that's because you've never tried it. And it's really intimidating when you do. One of the things that God has given me the gift to do is to be able to take somebody like you. Have you ever been in front of a camera? You have? Okay, not you. Have you ever been in front of a camera? Sat in several times. Who has not been in front of a camera? Southern is doing way too good of a job. Taking someone who has never been in front of a camera, getting them to tell their story, to laugh, to cry, to show real emotion in a way that you would think that they were a trained actor, but it's a real person who's never done it before. And if I did not understand the arc of story, how a story starts and builds a platform and grows and comes to a crescendo in a way, if you want to use a musical term, and then resolves, I wouldn't be able to do that. You know where I learned that? sitting in these classrooms, listening to Haleska and McClarty and all of them teaching about literature and delving into the greatest stories. So being an English major had nothing to do with being a successful businesswoman, but it had everything to do with being able to do what I was needing, the skills that I was needing to create the stories for branding. So that was, number one, make the best of every opportunity or situation, even when it seems unrelated to your long-term goals. 2, this one is tough. View feedback, also known as criticism, as a gift instead of a threat. That's one that I learned a long time ago, but didn't really articulate very well until I was interviewing someone for my book. And the incredible Lisa Sun, who is the CEO of Project Gravitas, the fashion label in New York City, told me a story about when she was about 22. She was fresh out of college, and she went to someone who was one of her mentors in business, and I think she was an intern or something, and she was asking her for advice, talking to this woman that she admired greatly and who was very successful in business. And the woman told her, "You lack gravitas, and you need to go get yourself some." Ouch! She's like, "What's that? Where do I get it?" And the woman told her, "Go get yourself a stunning black dress for work, a great pair of heels, a great bag," and Lisa says, "That's so shallow." The woman said, "No, it's not. Because you need to be the first person who respects your reflection in the morning. And if you respect and have confidence that you are capable of doing your job, you will project that and other people will respond to it." Well, Lisa Sun is now the CEO of a fashion label called Project Gravitas. And do you know what they make? Little black dresses for women in the office. And they make a killing on $400 little black dresses for women in the office. And it's a phenomenal company. But the whole company, she's the CEO of a fashion label in New York City. You know why? Because she took feedback which could have made her shrivel. She took it as a gift. And 12 years later, she turned it into an amazing fashion label. Because she didn't take it as a threat. So that's number 2. View feedback as a gift instead of a threat. 3, accept every opportunity to try something new that you don't think you can do. Accept every opportunity to try something that you don't think you can do. Best case scenario, you'll find out you can, and you might even like it. Worst case scenario, you will be really, really confident that it's not something you can do and you know what to hire someone else for later. But when you do hire someone else for it, you'll be very compassionate when they struggle in that because you know how hard it is because you've tried doing it yourself. And you have great respect for someone who may actually do it really, really well, and you'll value and treasure that instead of treating them with disregard because you know how hard it is to do that. One of the guys I got to interview for my book, his name is Corey Bergeron. Corey has sold more than $100 million worth of product on the Home Shopping Network. He is the guy that people trust. He's not sold $100 million worth of product on HSN because he's just the slickest salesman, because he's not. But he knows how to build trust. And you know where he learned that? Well, from several places, but one of the places that he learned that he told me about that had made a profound impact on him was one particular boss who was higher up in middle management. And in a period of time when there was a lot of conflict going on at their place of work, this guy took off his suit and tie on a regular basis, took off his jacket, took off his tie, and came down and would pull all-night shifts on the Home Shopping Network with the guys on the floor, pulling cable, running a camera, and listening to the frustrations and the concerns of the guys who got paid minimum wage. He knew Not because he'd started there as a kid and worked his way up. He hadn't. But he was willing to take off his jacket and tie and come down from the offices on the 3rd floor and pull the all-night shift with the guys getting paid minimum wage so that he could know what was going on in his team. He was willing to do things that he wasn't even good at to build relationships with people. Corey watched that. And at the time, I think when Corey started there, he was one of those guys pulling cable. And he became the guy who'd sold $100 million worth of product on HSN. But he was willing to try things that he didn't know if he was good at or not. Number 4. I've already mentioned this, but it's really worth mentioning again. Build solid, quality relationships with people above and below you at every step of the way, regardless of whether they currently appear to be of value to your plans or goals. You know how I got the opportunity to interview the CEO of Chipotle and spend an hour and a half with him? I actually texted him a picture of the classroom this afternoon, Dr. Weeks' classroom. I took a picture of the classroom and said, every student in this classroom has just been doing a case study on Chipotle, and I'm sitting here getting ready to talk about my book, which has a chapter on him. And he texted me back, that's so awesome, tell them hi. So you know how I got connected with Monty Moran? That's a funny story. See, I had this roommate here at Southern who ended up leaving Southern and going to Pepperdine University to get her law degree. And we stayed in touch over the years. And about 3 years ago, I saw her posting pictures from a mission trip in Sudan where she was working with lawyers in, I'm sorry, not Sudan, Uganda. She was working with lawyers in Uganda and going into prisons in Uganda and helping people who'd been unjustly incarcerated to become free again. And I told her, oh my goodness, that's amazing. How do I go about getting my video crew out there to do a documentary on that? That story needs to be told. It's a phenomenal story. Well, she says, let me put you in charge of the guy who runs this program. So she did. His name is Jim. He's a law professor out at Pepperdine. And I started talking to Jim, and over the next 6 or 8 months, Jim and I worked out a proposal, a strategy, a plan for a documentary. It works. I turned it into Jim, and he started talking to people to write checks. And we thought we were going to get this documentary. And I was talking to my crew, and we were looking at tickets for Uganda, and we were going to go and video and film this amazing story. And they found somebody to write checks who had a nephew who was a filmmaker. And the condition on him underwriting the entire documentary project was that his nephew get the job. So there went 6 months of hopes and plans and proposals and outlines and strategies. And I was bummed. I had been so excited about doing this documentary. It actually just came out last year. It's a great documentary. There's like 2% of me that still really wishes it was my crew that had done the documentary, but I'm also very glad they got it done. The story has been told. But even though Jim and I didn't get the chance to work together, we stayed in touch. He's a good guy. It wasn't his fault that the whole deal went south. So we stayed in touch, and last year, when I was working on my book, I thought, you know, Jim knows a lot of people that I don't know. So I called him up and I said, hey, Jim, I'm looking for people who are wildly successful in business and they refuse to sacrifice their ethics or their integrity. They're chosen to stay true to their core values. I want to introduce them. I want to interview them for my book. He says, let me think about it. So he arranged an introduction to the president of Pepperdine, whom I got to interview and who gave me a jacket endorsement for my book. And then he said, you know, there's this one other guy. We were roommates in college. Let me see if he'd be willing to talk to you. I said, okay. He gets back to me. He says, you ever heard of this little restaurant chain called Chipotle? Well, my bud Monty would be happy to give you an interview. Here's his personal cell phone number. Never neglect your network. And don't invest in people just because of what they can give you. Build relationships for their own sake. Because at some point, not because, but, and also, at some point, those relationships will be valuable to you. You never know who they're going to be. But be the kind of person who invests in the currency of quality relationships. One more, number 5. Stay loyally aligned to your core values. Now, the prerequisite for that is actually knowing your core values. Who can tell me one of your core values? Anybody? Honesty. Great one. Anybody else? Not being a respecter of persons. Okay? God first. Keep going. Who else? Yes?
Mine is obviously aligned with the Navy's core values of honor, courage, commitment.
Honor, courage, commitment. Everybody has anywhere from 3 to 5, maybe sometimes 7, but usually 3 to 5 is a good number of core values. And I am not talking about the things you think are awesome. I'm talking about the things you can't live without. You know the Jordan Sparks song, Tell Me How I'm Supposed to Breathe with No Air? Your core values are the ones that when they're missing, it's like there's no air. You can't breathe without these core values. You can't function without them. If these core values are missing or they're out of alignment, they're not connected properly with each other, it's like you're in quicksand up to here and you can't get a breath. I have 5, and I remember them with a little acronym LEGIT spelled with a J. My 5 are loyalty, excellence, justice, integrity, and transparency, because that brings trust. I can't function without those. Not in personal relationships, not in business. And once I realized that those 5 things were like oxygen to me, it makes it really easier to make the tough decisions. Because anything that doesn't align with those values, it's an easy no. I'm off the hook. I can give myself permission to be guilt-free about saying no to anything that doesn't align with those core values. Now, up front here, these are for you guys to go through later, not to get distracted with now, but take one, pass them around. This right here, I'm just going to flip through them quickly. Stephanie, when is our cutoff time? Okay, so we have 7 minutes. All right. This right here, this is what's inside of these. This is a worksheet that I do. CEOs and C-suite executives pay $2,500 for 4 hours, and I'm giving this to you guys for free. I love Southern. So these are ways to discover the values that mean the most to you. Once you know what your core values are, navigating that plate of spaghetti on your path to success and figuring out which fork in the road to take on all those little not neutral decisions becomes so much simpler. Because you have a rudder, you have a framework, you have a structure, and if it doesn't plug into the structure, it's gone, you're done. And you don't have to second guess. Some of you are sitting here saying, did I make the right call? I don't know. You know how to get rid of that lack of peace? Start with your values. Measure everything up against your values. And there will be decisions that are so painful to make. But you can still be at peace about them. That doesn't mean there will be easy decisions. Knowing your values doesn't make them easier. It just makes them guilt-free. And that's so worth it. So you guys keep those. Do them later if you're interested. And this is the last thing I want to leave you with in the last 5 minutes of today's class. If you're note-taking, you want to take notes on this. This is a formula to know that you have made the best decision you could possibly make at any given time under any circumstance. How would you like that? That doesn't mean that 20 years from now you won't look back with a completely different set of data and experience and maybe say, hey, you know what? I might have made a different decision. Because that can always happen. But I'm going to give you a framework of 4 questions that you can ask yourself in business and in personal life. And if all of these questions are in alignment, you can know that given the information you have at that time, you have made the right call. Every single one of us has this little king called willpower. Now on the way up here, on my flight, I got seated next to a really chatty guy, and I was going over my stuff. I was actually creating the little dudes here. I know they're really complicated, aren't they? I went to graphic design school. No, I'm kidding. And he said, willpower, huh? I don't have very much willpower. I said, you got plenty of willpower. You just got your advisors in the wrong order. Because see, if you take over here and you put your heart's desire in front of your conscience and your common sense, you're going to think you don't have much willpower. You just got your priorities out of order. He's like, oh, I never thought about it that way before. So your king will, your willpower, has 4 advisors. And they are ranked in this order. This is order of seniority. You cannot ask the questions out of order. If you do, you will not get the right answer. The first one is conscience. Every single advisor gets a one-word, gets one question with a one-word answer, yes or no. Conscience asks, is it right? This is very simple and straightforward. In the context of good and evil, moral and immoral, right and wrong, is it right? According to the 10 Commandments, is it right? If the answer is no, full stop, back up, new question, do not pass go, don't even keep going. And that's why conscience has to come first. But if the answer is yes, then you move to the next one. The next one is common sense. So it's the right thing. It is morally right. Great. But is it the best idea for this person, situation, for this time and place? Is it best? If the answer is no, reroute to the beginning, find a new question. But if the answer is yes, you get to go forward. And this one is desire. Desire's one simple question is, do I want it? And you answer, of course I want it. If I didn't want it, I wouldn't be asking this question. But it is a double-edged sword, desire is. Do I want it? And its consequences. Do I want to do this? And do I want to be happy with all the fallout that it will bring? And you have to answer both sides of the question. And last, does it align with the identity and the core values that God has given me? Each of us are different. Each of us have different priorities. Each of us have different callings. Each of us have different gifts. Just because something is right and best, and you might even want it, may not mean that it aligns with your values and is the right identity for you. If you can answer these 4 questions in any personal or business decision, you will know without a doubt that you have made the most accurate, God-centered, and conscientious decision, and you can move forward with no guilt based on the information that you have. And that is how I have learned to navigate my plate of spaghetti. Because at some point, you will have the opportunity to look in the mirror, and in every single one of our lives, there will come some time when you see more than one reflection staring back at you, and you have to decide which one of those is going to be you. And you have to be willing to say, I pick this person, this is going to be my identity, this is the good me. This is the guy, this is the woman that I want to be. And you have to recognize that there's going to be some attrition because of that. Some stuff is going to fall away. There's going to be stuff that was really, really okay inside your comfort zone, and it's going to go. And it's not going to be your comfort zone anymore, and you have to be okay with that, because it's going to be worth it in the end. And if there's one thing that I can tell you from everything that I have had to navigate in my very non-linear path to where God has me now, it is that when you follow your conscience and you stay true to your values, it is absolutely going to be worth it in the end. Thank you guys for having me here tonight.